about Sfirat Omer for a little while. Just I want to reintroduce that again, so I'm going to go to the next step on that idea. Sfirat Omer has two things in it. Sfirat Omer is when you, after Pesach, day after Pesach, you start counting. So what are you counting for? So you're counting toward Shua. That's one idea. You went out of Mitzrayim, we became free human beings, we became the Jewish people. Now the next thing is to get the Torah. So we're looking forward to that. We're preparing, we're excited, we're counting towards getting the Torah. That's one idea. Another idea is that we're counting up from what we accomplished. In other words, that's why it keeps going up, because what we accomplished by going out of Egypt is we became the Jewish people, and we acquired a national soul, certain properties, characteristics that are unique to Am Yisrael, in particular the property of faith, Amunah. That's what Pesach did for us. One of the big things that Pesach did for us. We got faith. It's deep inside our being. And then we add on this. That's Sfirat Omer has to do with that. Each day we count. Another day we're clarifying, connecting deeper to that faith, which is part of our essential being. Okay, but it says in the Sfarim that, so there's two things going on. We're counting, we're becoming ourselves more and more. People with faith, with people with connection to Hashem. And we're clarifying, purifying that inner connection. We're also getting ready for Matan Torah, to receive the Torah. So it says in the famous Sfarim, it says that the main time when you start to feel that second thing, that you feel excitement towards moving towards Torah, that comes after Lag BaOmer. This last 15 days, is it 15? I think it's 15, from Lag BaOmer till Shavuot, that's when you start to really feel the light of Shavuot. You're within the third, you're 2/3 of the way there, and then in Chassidut there's this concept called the Or HaChozer, the light, the returning light. You feel already coming within the domain of the time of receiving the Torah. You can start to feel that. It's in our heads. We start to think about it. We're going to now go to Chag Shavuot, which is the time of receiving the Torah. And maybe you remember it. You know, if you did it in past years, it's the back of your mind now. Oh, we're about to receive the Torah. You start to waken up that feeling. That's something I'm looking forward to. But there's a potential for that. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to talk about what it means to receive the Torah, what Shavuos is about, a little bit. You know, and I start talking about that now, since we're in that period where it's appropriate to start arousing our interests in what's coming, this special Yom Tov of Shavuot. Okay, so look here in the Pesukim that I brought. It's a pasuk in Devarim, and it's here, let me read it first. Rak yishamer lecha, u'shmor nafshecha ma'od. Only be very careful, and preserve your soul very much. Pen tishkach et devarim asher ra'u einecha, lest you forget the things that your eyes saw. U'pen yasuru milvavcha kol yemei chayecha, unless they go away from you, they return from you, they go out of your heart all the days of your life. And you'll teach them to your children and your children's children. So be very careful not to forget what you saw. And remember it and teach it to your children. What is that? The day when you stood in front of Hashem, B'chorev, on Har Sinai. Be'amor Hashem Elai, when Hashem said to me, this is Moshe speaking, Hakeli et ha'am, gather together the people for me, Vashmiem et devarai asher yomadun, and I'll make heard to them my words which they'll teach, or which they'll learn. Liyira oti kol yamim, to fear me all the days. Asherhem chayim al adama v'tpanehem yilamedu. They'll learn to fear me all the days, and they'll teach their children. V'tikravun v'tamdun tachat ahar, and you came near and you stood underneath the mountain. Har boer be'esh. The har was burning with fire. The mountain was lit up. Ad leva shemayim, until the heart of the heavens. It was a gigantic flame going up from Har Sinai. Choshek nan v'arafel, and there was also darkness there. There was like, I don't know where it was exactly. There was this pitch darkness in the arena of Har Sinai. And clouds, and also arafel is even the stronger term for darkness. So there was fire and darkness mixing together over there on Har Sinai. V'tik ravun tamdun takat ahar. You came near and you stood underneath the har, the mountain. Oh, I just said that. 1 second. V'daber Hashem aleichem etoch eish kol devar matem shomim usmuna einchem remzulati kol. And Hashem spoke to you out of the fire, and you heard a voice, and you didn't see anything, just a voice. V'yagid lechem et brito, and he told you his brit, his covenant, sher tziva etchem lasot aseret hadvarim, which he commanded you to do the 10 commandments. V'yiktavem al shnei luchot avanim, and then Hashem wrote them on the 2 tablets, and that was going to be delivered to Am Yisrael. So that's describing this experience of the receiving the Torah, which at the beginning, when it's describing it, it says that we have to remember it all of our days and not forget it. Be careful not to forget it, and teach to our children. And what is it supposed to remember and teach our children? This image, this experience of standing by Har Sinai and seeing the mountain aflame and this darkness swirling around, pitch darkness, and all that and then the voice coming out of the fire and speaking to us and teaching us the 10 commandments. That's the thing we're supposed to remember and never forget. A further description, or earlier description actually, of the same event, going into Shemot. Vahi b'shom yom shlishi, Yoda Boker. It was on the 3rd day, in the morning. Vahi kolot ubrakim va'anan kaved. There were voices and thunders. There was also thunder, and there was a deep cloud, a heavy cloud, al har, on the mountain. V'kol shofar chazak ma'od. Over here it describes there was also a shofar. There was the sound of a shofar. Very strong shofar blast going on during this time. From nowhere. No shofar, just a shofar blast. V'yecharad kol ha'am, and the whole nation trembled. Asher b'machaneh, who were in the camp. V'yotze Moshe et ha'am l'krat Elokim min ha'machaneh v'yatzvu b'tachtit har. Moshe brought the people out of the camp, and they stood underneath the mountain. V'har Sinai ashan kulo, and the whole mountain was smoking. Mibnei asher yarad alav Hashem, because Hashem had descended onto the mountain. The divine presence had descended onto the mountain. Va'esh, with fire. V'yal ashano ka'ashan akivshan, and the smoke was going up like a furnace. It was smoking away. V'yecharad kol ahar ma'od, and the mountain was shaking. Okay, so that's the description. So, okay. Now, in the beginning it says, be careful to remember this and don't forget it and teach it to your children. According to the Ramban, Rashi explains it a little differently. According to the Ramban, this is one of the 613 mitzvahs. Not to forget this. We have to remember this event, and and if you forget it, that's a prohibition, and you have to remember it and teach it to your children. That's a positive mitzvah. Okay, it's very interesting. Okay. It's sort of interesting. I mean, just a side point. Like, let's say we with our bodies weren't there, but there's a lot to talk about this. I'm not going to go into this right now, but our great-great-grandparents were there, and they saw it, and they passed it down. This is what the Kuzari says. The Kuzari? The Ramban. It's also Ramban. Ramban says that when your parents tell you something, you believe it when you're little. So the parents believe something and tell you to your children, you shouldn't believe it also. And so that's how it's transmitted, this story. So we're remembering it, we're passing it down, remembering it, even though we weren't there. We are part of the transmission from those that were there. It goes all the way down. Every generation, we pass it down one for the next. So that's the side point. But so we're supposed to remember it. And I guess we learn about it, and we are aware that this is what happened. And okay, so that's that. Now, I want to learn this Madrish. Let's look at the Madrish. So Madrish talks about what happened then, like the sort of the effects of this event on the world. And my source for this, I'm not making up this pshat. I'm taking mostly from Rav Kashtiel, who's one of the great contemporary Rosh Hashivas, Talmud of Tzviyuda. Okay. V'yishma Yitro Kohen Midyan, Ma Shemua. So it says in the pasuk in Parshas Yisro, it says, Yitro heard, the Kohen of Midyan, and he came out to the Midbar, to where the Jewish people were. So the Madrish asked, it says Yitro heard, it doesn't say what he heard. says Yitro was in Midian, and he heard. He came out to join up with the Jewish nation. So what did he hear? So there's a few opinions. So one opinion is this: Ma Shemua Shama Uba. What report did he hear? And as a result, he came to become part of the Jewish nation, Vinit Gayer, and he became a ger. What was the thing that he heard about? Rabbi Lezer Hamodoi Omer Matan Torah. So Rabbi Lezer, one of the Tanoim, said what he heard about was the receiving of the Torah. He heard about this event, or the giving of the Torah. He heard about the event, which were just described in these psukim. Heard about that event, and that's what got him to get up and come. Shama Uba. Shama Uba Shekeshenitna Torah Yisrael. Let me go back one second. Rabbi Lezer Modai Omer Matan Torah Shama Uba. So Rabbi Lezer explains what is the thing that Yisrael heard. He heard about the giving of the Torah, and he heard and he came. Shekeshenitna Torah Yisrael, because when the Torah was given to Yisrael, Haikolo Holech Misofa Olam Vad Sofa. So the voices that we're describing here, the voices of the thunders and lightning and the shofar and all those voices that were coming out of the mountain, they traveled throughout the world. I think that's what it sounds like, right? So, and then it goes on, it says, V'kol malchei ovdi chochavim achazatan ra'ada bekalehen. And all the kings of the idol worshippers, they became gripped with fear when they heard this voice coming out. Okay, so that's the story here. Now, I'm not sure if it's literal or not, It could be it's literal. It could be that there was this cosmic event that happened to Har Sinai, and it was somehow heard around the world. It was so cosmic that you could hear it all around the world. Maybe. But you don't have to say that. You could also say that they heard about it, word of mouth. It was passed around. That could be also. But in other words, when they heard about what happened, they were gripped with fear. They're about this event that there was this sort of cosmic divine revelation on Har Sinai, and the whole mountain was gripped with, was enveloped in flame and smoke, and there was shofar blowing, and there was thunder and lightning, and then the voice came out of the mountain and said the Ten Commandments. So when all the nations heard about it, all the kings of the nation heard about it, they were gripped with fear. In their heikalehen, in their different palaces. They're all in their different palaces around the world. They heard about this and they were gripped with fear. Va'amru. And then they said shira. And they said song. They started to sing. Shnemar u'beheichalo kulo omer kavod. In their palaces, it was all honor and glory. So in other words, they started to be excited about this event. This is amazing. They started to sing shira, celebrate this cosmic event. Nitkabtsu kulam etzel Bilam Russia. They then gathered all together to Bilam. So he was the big prophet from the nations. And they needed to understand something. They were all confused. They came to Bilam Russia. V'amru lo. They said to him, Ma kol ahamon sher shamanu. What is this voice we heard? Shema mabu bolam. So they started getting scared. I mean, it sounds like they celebrated it at first. They were excited about this, some kind of a cosmic revolution taking place. But then they got worried. So they went to Bilam to find out what's going on. They said, maybe there's a flood going to overcome the world. They were worried. It's too much like tumult in the heavens. Like, what does it mean? Amar lehem. Hashem l'malbu yashav amar lehem. V'yeshev Hashem melech li'olam. So he said like this. The pasuk says in Tehillim that Hashem dwells over the flood, and Hashem dwells there forever. He's settled. He's in control over the flooding. Meaning, kavar nishba. Hashem already swore that he's not going to bring a flood again. That he swore to Noah that there will never be a flood. So don't worry, it's not a flood. These cosmic events, revolutionary events, don't mean a flood. Hashem's not going to flood the world. Amrulo, they said to him, Mabel shamayim eno mevi, aval mabel shal eish mevi. Maybe he's not going to bring a flood of water, but he'll bring a flood of fire. Maybe he's going to engulf the world in fire. So they said maybe that's what's going to happen. Shnemar, Ki be'esh Hashem nishpat. Because Hashem will judge with fire. Amar lehen. Bilam said back to them, Kvar nishba, sheinu mashchit kol basar. He already swore, he already promised that he's not going to destroy the whole world. He also said that to Noah. Even in another way, not only by flooding, even by any way, there's not going to be a universal destruction. It's not going to happen. Uma kol lahaman hazeh sheshamanu. They said back, so what is this tumultuous, thundering voices that we're hearing? Amar lahem, chemda tova yesh lo bebeis ginzav. So Bilam said to them, Hashem has this deeply precious, desirable treasure in his treasure house. Shahayat gnuza etzlo for 574 years. I'm not sure why that's the number, but Hashem had it with him for all those years, centuries. Dorot, oh, not years, generations. He had it for 574 generations. Kodem shenivra olam, before the world was created. He had this precious treasure in his treasure house. Ubikesh litna libanav, and he now wants to give it to his children. So we have this spiritual treasure which belongs to Hashem, and he had it before there was a world, way before there was a world, and now he wants to give it to his people. Shenemar Hashem oz yamo yiten. As it says in the pasuk, Hashem will give strength to his people. So this strength, that's the Torah. Miad patchu, right away they opened up, they responded. Kulam va'amru, Hashem yivarech et amo v'shalom. Hashem should bless his people with shalom. So the nation settled down. They said, okay, this is good then. So that's the Madrish. Okay, so that's a really cool Madrish. And like all Madrashim, it's a little bit hidden. What's the point? What's really going on here? So I want to try to describe what I've seen, the explanation over here. Oh, I didn't put this on. Okay, put this on. Okay, so what it means is that the nations realized there was some kind of revolution taking place. There was a cosmic revolution. They heard about this event. There was never an event like this before. It spread around the world. Maybe they heard the voices, I'm not sure. But they heard that it happened. A lot of people heard what happened. It says in Sefer Yeshua that Rachav in Eretz Canaan heard about it. They heard about it around the world. And so they heard about this event. She heard about it, also. And it was obvious they heard about it because there's no news like this. This was the most amazing event imaginable. And they were excited about it. There's something big happening. Then they got frightened. They said maybe it's a flood coming to the world. Maybe it's fire coming to the world. Like maybe it's going to be bad for us. So what were they worried about? So it's like human nature that we usually think about change is happening. Obviously there was a change happening. There was some kind of a revolution, a cosmic revolution taking place. There was a spiritual revolution taking place. There was a big revolution. So people usually think when there's a change taking place, they think it's going to be a this-worldly change. They think it's going to be a change in the structure of life, in the social structure, in the economic structure. There's going to be a turnover in the structure of things. And here there are the kings in their heichel. They're running the show, and it means their show is about to be disrupted. That's the way they thought. They thought, okay, there's going to be a change in the world order, and what's going to happen to us? We're going to be overthrown, demoted, became irrelevant. We know what's going to happen with this. That's like the underlying, explain their fears. They expanded it to a mabul and to a fire. Like nowadays they do it. They expand their anxiety to global warming and all kinds of other things. When you're anxious, you get really anxious. So they were anxious. So they thought that the world order was going to change. So they asked him, is it going to be a flood? Is it going to be a fire? What's going to happen to the whole reality? It's going to be transformed. So Bilam said back, no, that's not it. Bilam was a prophet. As bad as he was able to understand certain things. So that's not what it is. It's going to be a spiritual revolution. And that's why when the events that happened in Har Sinai, they happened in the sky. They weren't changes on the ground. The symbol that happens in the sky up on top of the mountain means that the transformation is happening in the heavens, meaning in the spiritual worlds, in the worlds of human beings, in our world of our thinking, our desires, our will, our character. That's where the transformation is taking place. There's a revolution taking place, correct. This is like Hashem's big plan. He was waiting for all this time to bring this down into the world. When it was ready, when he had a Klal Yisrael there to receive it, there's supposed to be a different type of humanity than was existing till then. Till then, it was humanity that was not really focused on its purpose, not understanding what its purpose was. This is going to be a different kind of humanity. There's going to be a different experience of life, which is going to be understood now from this time on. There's going to be a transformation of how we live, how we look at the world, how we think, what we want. So when they heard that, they said, okay, that means I can still be, I can still be an engineer. I can still be I can still do my thing. I could be a minister, a king, a this and that. The world's going to be basically the same kind of world. And Bill said, yeah, it could be. It's not about changing your externalities. It's about changing your attitudes. It's about changing your focus on what's the goal of life. It's changing your character. That's the change that Torah is going to bring. It's not like communism. We're going to overthrow the bourgeoisie, and we're going to we'll empower the proletariat, and we're going to change the structure of things. Because anyway, that never works. I was just having a debate with someone about that. Like, you change the structure, that's what happened. Look, happened in China, happened in Russia, it's happened everywhere. There's so much inequality, so much injustice. So you got to change the system. You change the system, you kill 1 million people, 10 million, 7 million people, whatever, you kill all the people that seem to be perpetrating the injustice. You empower the weak and the persecuted, and what happens? They do the same thing the other ones. There was no internal change. Nothing happened. People need to change from within. My friend, I was arguing with him. He was saying, no, it's not true. You can't change from within until you get free from without. If you're in shackles, if you're enslaved, if you're so unlimited, you can't change within. I say, no, it's not true. You start changing then. You have a limited situation. You can't do what you want. Maybe you don't have so much money. Maybe there's oppression. You're experiencing oppression even. The change starts to come then. If you start to realize, well, I can be happy to some extent. I can still, my thoughts are free. I'm an independent person. I could make all kinds of choices within my limitations, And that's what really leads to the external things also moving away. And the external changes happen as well. The changes happen from within, not from without. So that's the discussion here. The nations thought, they knew there was going to be a change. They thought the change was going to be from without. They were afraid. They were the bourgeoisie, they were the rulers. They thought they were going to be overthrown, They thought it was a communist revolution. So it turns out, Bilam explained to me, that's not what it is. It's a revolution of the human psychology. It's a revolution of the human heart. There's now something came down into the world of Torah that's going to change the way we experience life. And that's going to be a major revolution. It's going to change everything, but it's not going to be an external change. You don't have to be afraid. I was talking to someone really recently. A lot of people, when they come to do tshuva, I think is one of the big impediments. Let's say a guy is a physicist, He thinks, I can't be a physicist and do all these mitzvahs. I can be part of this, observant world and be myself. And the answer is, sure you can. Physicists are great, It's not about changing what you do. It's about changing, your inner self. I can't be a person came to me recently. He's a Skinnerian psychologist, behaviorist. So he asked me, does that fit with Torah? I said, well, I don't know too much about behaviorism, but yeah, I think so. All kinds of things fit with Torah. Almost everything, except something that's against Torah, fits with Torah. You can do all kinds of things. You can live all kinds of lifestyles. You can bring all your talents into it, all your personality, all your skills into a life of Torah, because that's not what it's about. It's not changing your externalities. It's changing your bigger focus, your deeper focus, change your inner feelings. So that was the discussion. So then he calmed down the nations. He told them, yeah, this is a Torah that Hashem was always wanting to bring down to the world. This is going to give the world its true focus. So it's okay, that's cool. So the nations accepted that. They said, okay, Hashem should bless them with shalom. They're bringing in, a new order, which will also be good for us. We won't have to change our externals. That's the discussion. Here, look at Orat HaKodesh from Rav Kook. Chachma de Kodesh. Hinala mekol Chachma. The wisdom, the holy wisdom, the wisdom of the Torah is higher than all other wisdom. Bezeh. In this way. She mahapechet et ratzon v'techuna hanafshit. Shalom deha. That it transforms the will and the character of the people that learn it. Torah is different from that. You learn Torah, it transforms your will. You start to have a new desires, new goals in life. It transforms your inner character traits, learning Torah. L'karvem la'oto haromamut, it brings them near to that loftiness, shi ba'atzma mitatzemet bo, that the Torah embodies itself. The Torah embodies lofty ideas, lofty character. It's expressing to us. And learning Torah brings that into the person that learns it. Masha enkein kol chachmot olamiyot, which is not the case by other wisdoms of the world. Other wisdoms of the world, afal pish shehein mitzayirot inyanim niskavim yafim fatzilim. Even though they may describe beautiful things, sociology, how to conduct society in such a way which will be good. So you'll study sociology. That'll be great. But it doesn't go into your character that you become the kind of person that's. You can study psychology, you can study philosophy, you can study all kinds of things. It doesn't automatically become part of your character. It's something that you're learning about. It's meaningful. It's great. It's fantastic. But it doesn't absorb into your character, as you learn it necessarily. Ein lahen ota tkuna hamafalit. They don't have that proactive characteristic. There's something about the Torah, which it is, I'm trying to think of the word, like when you put chemicals together and they react, it's proactive, it's dynamic. When you learn Torah, something's happening to us. The more you learn, the more you sit and learn, it doesn't matter what you're learning. It could be about Mitzvah, it could be about Bakama, it could be Brachot, it could be Halachot, it could be Hashkafot, all the things we're learning, they're working on our heart and on our mind, transforming it. It's bringing the inner essence of the person who learns the Torah to the values of the Torah. The values of the Torah, as you discuss them and study them, they become your values. That's how it works. So that's, in other words, so the nations thought that what's going to happen is something that happens with other wisdom. Like maybe there's a wisdom coming into the world, a new way of thinking, a new way of working with reality, and they were afraid because maybe they would be unseated. Their systems would be overthrown. So Bilam explained to them, no, we're not changing any systems. We're changing the psychology of a human being. We're going to change the way you view life, and you're going to change your character. And that's what happens from the Torah. So that's why it's unique to other, as far as in compared to other kinds of wisdoms. How's it understand? So now just one more point I want to bring out here. So what came down on Har Sinai? What came down on Har Sinai was the Ten Commandments, in particular. There's different opinions about how that worked. Like it somehow could be that the whole Torah is hinted in the Ten Commandments. So on some level they got the whole Torah in 10 levels, 10 hints, to the whole Torah. Something like that. That's what it was. Like somehow the Ten Commandments might contain the whole Torah. Or there's maybe other ways of looking at it, but something like that happened. So, but what's special about the Ten Commandments? And the story is, we stood by the Har Sinai, everybody, and then came the fire and the smoke and the thunder and the lightning. It was smoking, fire was up to heaven, and the smoking was like a furnace, gigantic, and the Har was trembling, and the people were terrified. And there was a shofar blowing also. So what's all those things? So I almost skipped a step about the shofar. We'll talk about the shofar for a minute. What's the shofar doing there? So all those things are representing a revolution. It looks like maybe it was going to, nations thought maybe it's going to be a sociological or economic revolution, But it really wasn't. It was a spiritual revolution. So the shofar is there to teach us that. The shofar teaches us that it's really not about changing the externalities of how we live. It's about connecting to our deeper selves and getting connected to the lofty divine image that's inside a person and being more yourself. And as you absorb the Torah's values, that's also the deeper values of the person. So the shofar is blown. When you blow a shofar, you're blowing from the depths of yourself. The breath of life is coming out of the person. That's the shofar call. So shofar call represents not a physical, external revolution, an internal revolution. You're connecting to your deeper self. So as you connect to the values of the Torah, you're also connecting to your deeper self, because that's one. In essence, we're already connected to the Torah, and the Torah brings out who we are. And because why? Because a person has a divine soul. A person is very divine, very wise, very motivated towards kedusha, and as you learn Torah, that brings it out. So that's what's really happening. There was internal revolution. We were receiving the Torah, which is going to refine us and bring out our essence. Okay, so now how did that happen with the Ten Commandments? So listen to this. This is Rav Kashtiel's angle on the Ten Commandments in this context.
What's his name?
Rav Kashtiel. He's Rosh Yeshiva in Eli. Kashtiel.
Kashtiel.
Yeah. Kashtiel. Okay, so the first of the Ten Commandments is like this. Anochi Hashem Elokecha asher hotzeicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am Hashem who brought you out of Eretz Mitzrayim. So the main transformation that took place here, according to Rav Kashtiel, is the way we think about ourselves. All the Ten Commandments were especially talking about that. It was a revolution, now we think about ourselves. So the first one is, I am Hashem who brought you out of Mitzrayim. You, each one of you. I brought you, I found you to be a very important person. You have a divine soul. I took you out of the world of illusion, the world of chaos that people were in, especially in Egypt. And I brought you into the world of connecting to who you are and connecting to Hashem. So I brought each one of you out of Mitzrayim. We as a collective nation, we've all been brought out of the arena of illusion, which is part of being in this world. But we're, as a Jewish nation, we are not caught in it. We were freed from that. We're now in the world of connected to ourselves. That's number one. Connected to our neshamas. Then it says, Lo yeh lecha Elohim acharim. There will not be for you other gods. Which means that you don't have to look outside yourself for a purpose. The purpose comes within. And that's what the Torah addresses. The Torah addresses your inner world and brings out your sense of purpose and truth. And that's what's happening here. People pursue all kinds of things to succeed or to find themselves. It's inside. When you make images, when you serve images, you're in the wrong place. And images means all kinds of things that people serve and they're attached to. They're attached to money, they're attached to prestige, they're attached to being liked, all kinds of things. So there will not be for you any foreign gods. You yourself are what you're looking for, in a certain sense. Then the third commandment is, you will not bear my name in vain. So that means that even, let's say, a person knows that he has a divine soul and that there's Hashem over there and there's a Torah, if he makes it uses it, the shav means you won't lift up my name for shav, means in vain. It means that you're not taking it seriously. You're not putting it at the center of your life. You realize there's a Torah, you realize you have a great soul, but you're busy with other things, you're preoccupied, you don't really think that you could make it the center of your life. That's the third mitzvah. The fourth one is, Zachor Yom Shabbat Lekadsho. Remember Shabbos. What happens on Shabbos? Also on Shabbat, you have a neshama yetera, you have an extra soul element, and you connect to yourself, to your Selem Elokim, you start to connect to the inner self. and you start to get connected. That brings out that amunah, that refinement, which the Torah brings out. That's Shabbat. The fifth thing is kabedes avicha v'simecha. Honor your parents. Honor your mother and your father. So that means that when you think that you have parents that brought you into the world and they care about you. Parents care about their children more than anybody else, And so you think about your parents that care about you, then you think about there's another partner in your creation, that's Hashem. So just like your parents care about you and consider you deeply significant, so all the more so Hashem does. Hashem values you. You have a neshama elokit. So after you internalize the first 5 commandments, right? So then you realize when you realize that you have a divine soul, you have a neshama elokit, and that's what we learned from the first 5 commandments. So you realize that everyone else does too. That's what human beings are. They have a divine soul, and you start to interact with other people in a different way as well. So then you get to the other 5 commands, which are don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't kill, what's number 4 again?
Don't steal.
Don't bear false witness, and don't covet what someone else has. So all those things come naturally to a person. It becomes like within your realm to keep all those things once you know who you are. Coveting means like desiring things which are not yours. Like there's a prohibition. This in some ways is the foundation of all the other ones. Like if let's say there's a beautiful apartment over there and you want it, So then if you start feeling that desire to have something which belongs to someone else, and internaling that desire and start making efforts to bring it around, that you should get it, even if they say
bad kavanah based on Yetzer Hara.
Yetzirah means, but a particular one. The Yetzirah means wanting things that aren't yours. So that's the 5th one. So the point here is that that once you have the deepened connection to self, which comes from the 10 commandments, at least for the first 5 commandments, the ones between us and Hashem. I am Hashem, your God, who brought you out of Egypt. Don't look for your support, your direction from outside of me. Keep Shabbat, honor your parents. All that tells you that you are divine, that you are in Hashem's first attention. Hashem wants you to succeed. Hashem wants you to come near Him. That's the thing. When you get that, when you start to realize that, so then you'll be able to do the other ones as well. Everyone has a divine Elohim, has a Tzelem Elohim. Everyone has a divine essence. And you won't want to steal from them. You won't want to kill them. You won't want to adulterize someone else's wife. You won't get up in courts and start lying about issues, that affect people. And you won't want something that someone else has because you don't need it. Because what you have is what you're supposed to have. You're in a direct relationship with Hashem. Ask Him for what you want, So that's the story. So it's very, very interesting. So you're supposed to think, so this is a mitzvah. So it's a really interesting mitzvah. And it's especially the right time to think about it. The mitzvah is to remember that event on Har Sinai. There was a revolution taking place. There was fire and steam and all kinds of thunder and lightning. The whole mountain was on fire. Nothing had ever happened before. The whole mountain was steaming up to the heavens and smoking up to the heavens. It was unbelievable. Everyone was trembling. The mountain was trembling. The people were trembling. It was the most awesome experience there ever was. It was a spiritual experience. And there was a shofar blowing to describe to us that the main point here is internal revolution. You're now going to start connecting to yourself. You're going to realize that the purpose of life is connecting to your deeper self and refining yourself and getting closer to Hashem. And then what happened? The 10 Commandments came out of the mountain, guiding us how to do that, how to discover who we really are. Questions, comments?
If in the Sinai there is a revolution, why when Israel leave Sinai?
What's Sila?
Well, Sinai.
Sinai. Yeah.
Mount Sinai. The Midbar. How be problem? How the things law prohibit Hashem.
Okay, keep going. So what's your question?
我说如果在希腊山上，那是一场革命的话，为什么在这个在那个沙漠就是巴米的巴里面，为什么有那么多的这种根本就不敬畏神的这种行为？
慢一点。
就是说如果那是一场革命的话，那为什么？
在什么？
如果那是一场革命，有
在希腊
山上，希腊山所见到的是一场革命的话，是一场革命，有路线。
He say,
Yeah.
The Sinai, the mountain, the Sinai mountain.
Yes.
对吧？这是一场革命的话。革命
revolution.
Because why is there revolution? Yeah, because the revolution, because there was this fire and smoke and voices telling us that the whole world was being.
No revolution in heart.
That's what it is. That's what it's bringing about a revolution in the heart. But but we experienced it as a drama, because it was teaching us this is a revolution. There's going to be a revolution coming down. The nations thought it was a worldly revolution, but it wasn't. It was a revolution of the way people think. We're going to start focusing. We're going to realize our divine essence, and we're going to start living in a different way. The whole world. And the nations were frightened. They didn't know what the revolution was. Turns out it's a revolution of Torah coming to the world to teach us what life is about. The shofar represents that, right? The shofar represents that it's coming from the depth of the person, this sound. What we're going to now, we're going to connect to our deeper selves. That was a revolution. Yeah. Anyone else? Comments? I don't know if he answered the question, but... Anyone else?
This may be too much of a question for the moment.
Okay.
But could you address the connection between the Ten Commandments and the 10 utterances?
That is a big question. That's an interesting one. I mean, it's a little over my head also. It's a real Kabbalistic question. But I can just tell you, let me just think. What can I say about that? What I understand is like this. The 10 utterances, the world was created with 10 sayings of Hashem, right? And what that means is, I'll just say is what my understanding is very limited, this Kabbalah stuff. But it means that the world was created in such a way that the divine will pervades the whole world. Hashem made the world. It wasn't made by accidents of nature. It was made with the 10 utterances of Hashem. So what that means is that when we interact with the world, we also can start to connect to Hashem, because His wisdom fills the world. And so it's a divine world. But the problem is, it's hard to know exactly what Hashem wants just through nature. You have an idea, there's this harmony, there's this purpose, if you know what it is, And it's a rare person that can get to the deepest understanding of what life's about just through, philosophizing on the basis of what he sees in nature. So what happened was, later when we had Am Yisrael coming to the world, you had those messages being expressed in words, which was the 10 Commandments. So the messages was fill nature and teach us how to get close to Hashem, because we learn through nature as well. Hashem's wisdom fills the world. And everything moves us towards Hashem. Like eating. Like we're learning in brachas about food, We have food because as we take food, we feel gratitude. We start thinking, who did make the food? So everything is bringing us to deeper understanding in the world. But it's vague. Until you have the 10 Commandments, then it became expressed in language to guide us more specifically. So that's the 10 utterances being now metumtzam, brought miraculously down into human language, where we could get a specific guidance of how to live. Good? So it fits with the storytelling. It was a good question, actually, that it was a revolution. Now, people have different ideas about what life's about. Now, we're getting much more powerful, specific guidance through the 10 Commandments. Anyone else? Aharon? Okay. Very good. Okay.